Hi everyone, it's Evelyn, and we're going to go over the items that I use within my bouquets that are not annuals. Because perennials are a lot less work. I know a lot of people say there's more weeding involved with them, but I actually do not find that, because a lot of the perennials, if they're dense enough at the base, the weeds don't grow anyway, at least not in my area. So I'm not going to do it in my most favorite to my least favorite, because it really depends on the season. I can't say this is my favorite if I can't use it for multiple months of the year of making bouquets. These are the perennials that I use in bouquets. So we're going to start at the beginning of the season, and what we're going to start with is the camellia. Now, if you have been following me for a while, you'll know that I wasn't able to use camellia blossoms last year because we had an ultra cold night one night, and none of the buds opened up except for maybe a dozen, and of those dozen that opened up, they just all shattered once you touched them, so they were really affected by that one cold night that we had. But what was interesting is that this year we didn't have a really cold night, so I expected a really good harvest of my camellias. And in the whole area of the bush that all the buds had fallen off on the cold night the previous year, I didn't have any buds this year either, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because no buds were able to set. And where the buds were, where they shattered, I did get flowers there that were fine, but there were so few of them that I didn't bother using them in bouquets. But the camellia is on my property. It's a beautiful flower. It's an early flower. It blooms around the beginning of May, if not late April, depending on the weather. And it is very, very useful to use. So it is a perennial that I'm more than happy to have in my garden to use in bouquets for flowers when I actually have flowers. Now, for that reason, this bouquet that I'm showing you, this is several years old, because I didn't use it in bouquets this year or last year. And as you can see, I've got it paired with cherry branches, which are also just a cherry tree. If you can grow an ornamental cherry tree with flowers that blooms early flowers on it, on your property, or know someone who has it, it is a stunning addition to bouquets. And I would use it if my camellias were blooming, but we don't have a cherry tree on our property. So going forward, I may still have to use it because I don't really have anything to pair with it, but I'm really trying to focus on things that are on my tiny urban flower farm, not things that I have to go to friends' properties to go and cut, because it's all about, I just want to be able to go out in the morning, cut what I need, get the flower wagon going, and be done with it for the day. I don't want to have to then go and drive here, there, and everywhere else and pick up branches of cherries, cherry blossoms, etc. So we'll see next year if and when I get the camellia flowering, if I use the cherry branches with it as well. If the cherry tree was on our property, absolutely. The caveat is it's not on our property. Now, the thing with the camellia is that it's also useful when it's not blooming, because as you can see in this picture here, it is absolutely full of leaves. Now, with the camellia bush being full, it's also right up against our driveway, so it extends into our driveway and needs to get pruned back off the driveway every year. And it has the most beautiful, shiny, oval, perfect leaves on it. You saw it in the bouquet. I'll just put the bouquet up again. It's a stunning, stunning leaf. It's not a fast-growing leaf, so I can only use that which I need to prune off the driveway. But it holds its color and its shape and its look straight from, well, all 12 months of the year. It looks beautiful any month of the year. So I don't have to prune it off the driveway right away. It's such a slow grower. I can prune off what I need as I need it. And I tend not to use it in the summer, because there's another perennial leaf that I use that's very similar to this one, and you guys who follow me all know which it is. But I do prefer the camellia. However, I don't want to over prune all my camellia because I don't want to lose the flowers on it. So camellia bush, if you have one, fantastic. If you don't have one and it does well in your climate, I would consider planting one, but it's kind of like peonies. It doesn't bloom for the first several years. You have to have patience for it to bloom. But yeah, camellia is just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful leaf. Now, after the camellia flowers, which is, like I said, late April to early May, right on its heels, there might be a gap, depends on the year, comes something that isn't on our property but hangs over our property's edge, which I absolutely love using, and that is rhododendrons. Specifically this red rhododendron. Now my neighbor has about 3 or 4 different rhododendrons that are all kind of like a hedge. In our location and climate, they grow super tall, like as tall as houses, and they will get that wide as well if you're not cutting back on them. So it's always constantly almost trying to touch our house every year and touch wires that are up in the air. So I'm constantly having to prune it anyway. So I'm simply using the prunings, but there's so many of them. And her rhododendrons hold up really well in a vase. We have a large rhododendron on our property, which is a pinker one, which doesn't hold up well in a vase. So it's variety dependent. I don't know what hers are. She doesn't know what hers are. But they really do make beautiful bouquets, as you can see in this one. And they're right in time for Mother's Day. I cut every available blooming rhododendron that I had for bouquets for Mother's Day, and they were selling quite well. And everything that's in this bouquet is a perennial for me, and I will go over what they are. So you can see the blue in the background. Well, that's bluebells. Bluebells are perennial. Well, they're perennial for everybody. They just grow wild. They just sort of pop up here, there, and everywhere else where they want. They grow in the shade. They have really long stems. So as you can see in the bouquet, they're poking up the top of the bouquet. And you can see the stems aren't that short on the bouquet. So bluebells are really, really useful for my Mother's Day bouquets. And that blue really pairs nicely with the red shade in the rhododendrons. I also have a kale, or 2 kales actually, that for whatever reason perennialized. This was their 3rd or 4th year that I've cut flowers off of them. And they're little yellow flowers. They look really pretty in the rhododendron bouquet as well. They add a nice little different texture because of how dainty they are to that really strong, demanding flower of the rhododendron. And I love using the kale flowers. It's absolutely prolific, as you can see in the picture that I put up here. And it blooms for quite a long, long time. Once it starts to go to seed pods, the seed pods are pretty cool to look at as well. But at some point, then it's just all seed pods, and I cut the blooming sections of it all off because I have never had kale plants just pop up here, there, and everywhere else on my property, but I'm afraid they will, so I cut them off. But then I just compost them anyway. I'm sure the birds clean up the seeds because we have so many birds on our property. So the other thing that you see in this picture that is a perennial that's somewhat on my property, but mostly from my neighbors. Again, it comes in underneath the fence, and I've let it grow this year because I want to use it, is the snowberry. And what I'm using in the spring is the snowberry branches. And the cool thing about the snowberry branches is that in the summer they get these little unimportant little tiny rosy colored flowers on them. But in September, they get the white berries on them, which is why they're called the snowberries. So I went and cut a really ugly looking branch so that I could show it to you because I want to use everything that's on my property. So you can see here. So here's what the berries are starting to look like. They're just starting to get into berry form. You can even see on this branch, there's the who cares flowers that show up on them. Really, really pretty. And using the snowberries in bouquets is really beautiful. This bouquet was actually taken last year on September 11th. So I've got it paired with, excuse me, a late planting of cosmos. I've got it paired with sunflowers. And can I say any? Oh, snapdragons. My second flush of snapdragons are in there. But what I think really makes this bouquet is the branches with the beautiful, lush, white snowberries on them. I think snowberry is another thing that if you can grow it, you should really consider growing it on your property. Now, I went from snowberries in the middle of May to snowberries in September, but we're going to bump back to now the end of May, which is peony season. Now, I have found you can extend your peony season by growing Ito peonies as well as herbaceous peonies. And Ito peonies tend to bloom before the herbaceous peonies do. So I have 8 Ito peonies growing, and I have 6 herbaceous peonies growing. And The Ito ones, they're not as full and fluffy as the herbaceous ones, or at least not the ones that I have, but they're bigger in size. And they're earlier than everybody's herbaceous peonies, so they are something that is, again, a little bit more unusual at the Flower Wagon. And they come in a variety of colors, even yellow. And the yellow one, which is called Bartzella, is my favorite. Now you can see in this bouquet, I've got the Bartzella in it. 2 of them actually, well 3, because you can see there's 3 in there. And I've got it paired with the camellia branches, so you can see that beautiful shiny leaf in it. Now you can also see in here that the new leaves are slightly paler than the, now in the beginning of September, much darker green leaves than in this picture with the bouquet. I think you can tell that it's a slightly more olive in shade when the leaves are first starting for the extension of the branches. The other thing you can use with the peony is you can make more texture with the branches. This one's flopping already because I just cut it and it's really hot outside. Is adding in the peony leaves themselves, because they have a completely different look than the camellia branches. So peony branches, really, I wouldn't use them in the heat of the summer because they tend to flop in the heat, which is exactly what this one's doing. But you can use them in the early fall or late summer when the temperatures aren't as hot. We're still in a heat wave. We've had a few days here and there where the temperatures cooled down and we've had rain, but we're still back in our heat wave, which is should continue at least for another week. Anyway, beautiful shape of leaf. It gets rusty toned for the winter. The Ito peonies have better leaves than the herbaceous peonies to use in a bouquet. And because, for one thing, they're not as floppy as stems. So you can see as I hold the stem, it stands up straight. Ito peonies don't flop like a herbaceous peony does. So the leaves on an Ito peony are really nice to use in bouquets in the fall, especially once they start to turn their autumnal colors, which of course they haven't done yet. Now, the really interesting thing about, I'm just going to take that branch out of there because it doesn't, in case it's in the view screen, it doesn't, the way it's flopping, it doesn't look good. Here, let's make this look pretty. There we go. There. Okay, so, oh, I got water on my computer. The really interesting thing about the peonies for me was last year, I got, one of my Ito peonies is called Canary Brilliance. And I got a Canary Brilliance bloom on August 6th, which I thought was really strange. One of you guys gave me a link to an article that talked about how Canary Brilliance is one Ito peony that will sometimes do a second flush in August. So last year mine did, but it only did with 1 bloom. This year it did not. However, this year I got a bloom on August 22nd of my pink double dandy. So I didn't use the pink double dandy because we were in a heat wave and it wasn't going to hold up at the Flower Wagon at all. But pink double dandy is actually to date, my most prolific Ito peony in the cut flower beds. So there was somewhere between 20 and 30 blooms on the one plant. I used a lot of it. It was my most reliable blooming Ito peony of the year this year. You can see I've also got it paired with the kale flowers, which are the little yellow ones, the snowberry leaves, which are those, the ones that have the skinny little stem with the pears on it going up. There's also some cherry branch leaves in there, which are the dark burgundy ones. It's paired with an allium, which is also a perennial. When you plant your alliums, they come back year after year. It has a branch of long-needled pine in there, which is a perennial that I love, but I didn't use this year because, again, I'm trying to focus on using things that grow on my own property, and the long-needled pine does not grow on my property. If I had one, I would use it in bouquets a lot, but it's not on my property, and I didn't want to go to all the trouble of going and cutting it because my exercise this year was to stay focused on what I could use within my own property boundaries. Even if it's a neighbor's perennial that's hanging over the fence, that's still within my own property boundaries. So you can see how really cool the allium, the purple of the allium pairs with that Bartzella and that pink double dandy Ito peonies. And the other thing that's really interesting about the oleum is when it first starts to open up, it's a really tight ball of purple. And then all the tight ball of purple is all these little tiny purple flowers. And they grow from the center, and their little stem in the center starts to lengthen. And as it lengthens, the ball gets bigger and bigger and a little looser and a little looser. So in the beginning, it's a small ball, but then eventually the ball gets bigger. And I really like using the oleums in my bouquets a lot. To me, it's a perennial that I would definitely not do without. Now, the problem that I had is I grow several oleums. I grow the Globe Master, which is the first ball like that to open, so that's what's in this photo. But then on the tail of the Globe Master comes the Ambassador, which looks almost identical, but at its full mature size is a smaller ball and not as loose. But I don't know why. I had like 40 Ambassador oleums, and I think only 3 of them came up this year. That's only in their 2nd year. I don't know what happened to all of my Ambassador oleums. All 40 of the Globe Master came up, and only about 3 of the 40 Ambassadors came up. That is really weird. I don't know what happened with that, and I'm disappointed about that. But I'm not about to go and buy wholesale another 40 because they're not cheap, and potentially have the same thing happen. So that was a little of a jolt to my system to not have the Ambassadors falling on the tail end of the Globe Master, because it would have increased my season of those purple balls of oleums. My Mount Everest, which is a white oleum, did come up. My Atropurpureums that I have, which is a slightly different shaped oleum, did come up, as well as my drumstick oleums. But my hair oleums, which are really funky looking, I had 100 of those, and again, I only got about 3 of those coming up. So I don't know if it was because the location was just slightly wetter. You want to come up and say hi? Okay, up you go. Come on, up. Hello. This is Leela. Leela, say hi. Say hi. Yeah, so I don't know if it was because the location was slightly wetter or what. That is the only thing I can think of, because our property is on a slight slope all the way to our very back fence. And the hair oleums and the Ambassador oleums were slightly closer to the fence. And that meant that they were wetter, because we are a very wet climate. And where the fence is, there's actually about a 3-foot drop-off into the properties on the other side of our back fence with a concrete retaining wall. So all that water hits the concrete retaining wall and kind of sits there, which is why my astilbes do really well along that fence there, because it's definitely a lot damper. But anyway, that's the only thing I could think of. But as you can see in this next bouquet, here I now have an herbaceous peony. And you can see that and that's a this year picture, and you can see that the Globe Master oleum is much looser now. It's not such a tight ball of those little purple flowers. It's much, much looser. So it gives that purple, but it's a completely different kind of texture. And it's got the Mount Everest white dahlia oleum behind it, which is kind of coming to the end of its term. So it's looking more green than white, but still adds a beautiful green texture to the bouquet. And so we've got the two oleums, which are perennials. We've got the herbaceous peony, which is perennials. And we now also have well, actually there is some camellia leaves down around the bottom of this bouquet. But coming up the top is the beginning of my laurel leaves. And this is what a laurel leaf looks like as opposed to a camellia leaf. You can see how the leaves are very, very similar. But the camellia is, I'm just going to pull off a leaf from the bottom here. Okay, so laurel leaf, camellia leaf. About half the size, almost the same color. The back, if you look at the back of the laurel and you look at the back of the camellia, same color. They look very, very similar. It's just that the laurel leaves are much longer, and I just dropped this branch. And with the camellia, it tends to have slightly more of a 3-dimensional layout of the leaves, because they're not completely flat. They will go off in every direction, but the laurel is definitely a 2-dimensional structure to the leaves. So you get a bit more play of light a little less demanding of each leaf than you do with the laurel leaves. But what you don't get with the camellia is, like, I use the laurel leaves to push up and underneath sunflowers, and the stem of the laurel will actually hold a kind of a droopy head of a sunflower up. But I can't do that with the camellia leaf. It's much woodier because it grows so much slower. I just broke the top of this one out. The laurel leaves are very pliable because they grow so much in the course of one season. I mean, this is all new growth from the summer. Whereas if you look at the camellia branch, it's woody right up to here. Its growth per year is very, very little, and because it's got such a slower growth pattern, it's much more rigid. I mean, you can curve it, but not like the laurel leaf. Now, the laurel, I love using. It's a staple. It's a perennial because it's a bush. It's not on my property. It's on my neighbor's property. It somewhat comes over the fence, but mostly it grows so tall that she's okay that I'm using it all the time because it's getting pruned by me and not her. And it grows a lot. I love laurel. I never advise growing it because it is one of the fastest growing bushes that you can get. People where I live plant it all the time as a privacy hedge, but then they regret it because it grows so fast, not just in height, but in width. So you can buy a small tiny ball and it'll end up being like 12 feet wide by, I don't know, full-size tree height if you're not constantly staying on top of it because of how much it grows every year. So I would never plant it on my property. I think it is a problem plant to grow unless you can cut on it all the time, which of course as a cut flower farmer, I mean, I'm cutting on this laurel bush all the time. So this one bush on her property gets trimmed by me, even though it's on the other side of our fence. But the other thing about laurel is if you ever want to dig it up and get rid of it, it's really, really hard to get rid of the root ball. So as beautiful as the laurel is, especially in this picture that you can see here with the evergreen tree growing up through it, I wouldn't plant it. So we're now going to talk about another perennial flower that I use non-stop when I have it, and that's marjoram. And I have two marjorams. I have one that comes up purple and one that comes up white. The purple one comes up first, and in this bouquet here you can see it, all the little fluffy little purple flowers that come out the top of it. It adds such a delicate texture again to a bouquet that otherwise has the strong demanding structures of the sunflowers and the gladiola here, as well as even the poppy pods. But my purple marjoram that last year went straight to September is, if I pull the one out that I have now, as you can see, finished. And I think it's because we had such a long, extended, hot temperature season with very, very little water that the season for my marjoram plants ended a month before normal. But that's okay, because I have other things that I'm using now. But I will use as much of my purple marjoram. I use 3 stems in each bouquet. I kind of have a recipe where I try to stick with 11 or 12 stems to the bouquet. Try to stick with 11, but sometimes it's 12. And that would be, like, for instance, in this bouquet, I've got 3 sunflowers, 3 purple marjorams, 1 gladiola, probably 2 dahlias, 2 branches of the laurel, and then this one would have the 12th stem because I put the poppy pod in it. I didn't put a lot of poppy pods in my bouquets this year because I had a florist who was buying pretty well all of the poppies that I had blooming this year. She liked the poppy pod structure. So she came by on 3 separate weeks and bought up all of the poppy pods that I had. So that was actually a really good sale. Anyway. So purple marjoram is one that I really, really think is stunning. And I just have a small patch of it. It's only about, I don't even think it's 3 feet long, and it's only about not even a foot wide. But it grows so densely and puts up so many stalks that are really, really thin. I mean, it's just this solid mass. And they don't all bloom at the same time. So it's blooming in a way that even though I'm cutting on it for quite a long period of time, there's always new ones coming online until now when it's finished its season. So I thought the purple marjoram is one that is a real staple for me for my bouquets, and I love using it in bouquets. So it's a perennial that I'm more than happy to have. It's not one that I ever have to worry about weeds coming up underneath. The biggest thing I have to worry about is that it spreads too fast, and I have to keep it contained to the size that I want it. Now the next perennial that we're going to talk about is astilbe. Now as you can tell by that photo, I have 3 different types of astilbe growing. I have white, which is called bridal veil. I have pink, don't know the name because I've had it for years. I've carted it around to several properties that we've had. And I've got red, same thing, don't know the name because I've just carted it around for years. And I think it actually originally came from our property on Cortez and didn't know the name of it then, but I knew that I loved astilbe, so I always made sure that I brought it with me when we sold and moved. Now this bouquet, you can see that I have pink astilbe in it, and you can see how fluffy and lush it is. Now the really interesting thing about astilbe is if it starts to go off on color and no longer looks good to use in the bouquets. Previously, I had been cutting it with its color and drying it and using it in autumnal bouquets as a dried insert. But last year I got a little lazy and I only cut about half of it, and I left the other half on the plant, and I discovered that when you leave it on the plant, you still get a beautiful autumnal color. It's browner, but that's okay, it's for the autumn. It still has beautiful texture to it, but instead of being dry, it's alive and has all of its movement in it. So I'm really enjoyed using dried astilbe in a bouquet last fall. So you can see this bouquet here, that's from last fall. It was a bouquet from September 21st, and it's got that beautiful autumnal color coming out the top that pairs so nicely with those deeper, richer colors that I used in this bouquet, which in this case has a lot of dahlias in them. It's got some sunflowers, it's got some cosmos, it's got some snapdragons, and of course it's got the laurel leaves around the bottom. I love how it looks in the fall, fresh with its browner tones. And so I'm no longer drying it. I left all the stalks that I didn't use, and I've got a lot because I got way too much astilbe growing. I should actually, there's at least one clump that I'm gonna dig up and give away. But I should probably dig up more. What I might do is every year is just at least dig up one because I got way too many. And the only reason that's a problem is because I'm limited on space now. I've kind of run out of area. So in order to add new flowers to my cut flower beds for when I want new flowers to grow, because I don't have necessarily enough growing for a particular season, I don't have anywhere to put them. But if I get rid of a few of the astilbes, then I'll have a place to put them. So anyway, I'm really happy with how the astilbe is now looking as a fresh addition in the fall. So that really makes the astilbe plant quite useful and functional. Now let's go back to this one that was from the spring that was fresh. Now you can see I've got an allium in there as well. It's I think this is actually a Globe Master that is now past its prime, so it is no longer purple either, but still has that beautiful spherical texture to it, which looks really nice within the bouquet. You can see I've got a little bit of the bridal veil white astilbe off to the far side, just above where the feverfew is. Do I have any other perennials in here? I've got some yarrow in this one. My yarrow is not making my list of favorite perennials because, first of all, it did poorly this year. But I've only just used it because I've had it. It's not something that I've ever thought that I needed to give more space to because I don't actually like it in my bouquets. Now that's me in my bouquets. I know lots of people love it. But yarrow is just not one that I'm thrilled about. It's another one where the space it's taking up might be better suited to give to a perennial that is more beneficial at a different time of year, because like in the early spring I would like to have some other varieties than what I have. So I may give away that little location where I have my yarrow to an earlier blooming flower that gives me more use and function than it does when it blooms within the bouquets, within the seasons that I have now. Because you can see here, it's got that nice little touch of orange in there, but it's not really, even with it not in there, wouldn't make much difference. It's just like a little bit of an extra little thing. So yeah, yarrow is not making the list of favorite perennials for me at all. Now, this next bouquet also has the pink astilbe in it, but it's got now another perennial that's coming online on June 30th for me, and that is my double-headed snowdrift Shasta daisy. That texture with the yellow center and those really frilly, fluffy kind of petals to it, that texture of that daisy is one that I love. I don't like a Shasta daisy, probably because they grow everywhere here on the sides of roads, on the highway, etc. They're just so common looking, a standard Shasta daisy, that I would never put it in a bouquet. To me, it devalues the bouquet. But this snowdrift double-headed Shasta daisy, it is fun. I love it. So that's a perennial that was in its third year this year. So it's one that I'm looking forward to now for every further year, having more and more and more of it available, because I bought 2 bunches of it, or 2 1-gallon pots of it 3 years ago, and finally had quite a few of it to use this year. I'm really looking forward to having even more of it next year. It's a daisy that I'm so happy that I found. I found it in a garden center. I was just cutting through the garden center, Canadian Tire Garden Center. I was just cutting through the aisles to see what they had. I probably had to go to Canadian Tire for some reason or another. And I thought I'd check out the garden center, cutting through all the aisles, etc. And that one just stopped me dead in my tracks. I actually walked past it and quickly turned around and said, what is that? Because it's just so beautiful. So very, very happy to have the Snowdrift semi-double Shasta daisy on my property. And that is one that I would love to give more space to than what I have it already. I would love to have more clumps of it. So that's one that I may, if when it comes time to divide it, that might go in the spot that the yarrow is in, because the yarrow is in kind of a dry, yarrow? Yeah, is in sort of a somewhat dry little section. I have another new perennial coming for next year, but we'll get to that in another video. And it needs to go in a damper location. So where I'm digging up the one Astilbe is a perfect location for the new upcoming perennial to go into. So here's another bouquet with the double-headed snowdrift Shasta daisy, and you can see it just pairs so beautifully with things. It's got the laurel leaves, which are the perennial. It's got the allium tucked into the center, which is a perennial, but it's also got anemones, black button, bachelor buttons, poppy pods, and sunflowers, which are not perennials. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please take a second and give me a thumbs up down below. I really appreciate it. Okay, so what have we got next? We're next going to talk about hydrangeas. So I grow 3 different types of hydrangeas on my property. And again, I'm a tiny urban flower farm. So when I decided to grow hydrangeas on my property, I didn't plant them because they get huge here. They love the environment that we grow in. We also get acidic soil. So any of the mop heads bloom blue, not the pink that a lot of others of you get. A lot of others of you try to get that blue look. We just get it naturally. So I just thought for fun, I went and cut a branch of the blue mop head so you can see what it looks like now at the beginning of September. It's still usable, but I don't need it. So any of the ones that I still have left on the plant, I may need a little later in the season, but for now I don't need them. Normally I don't have any left, but we got so hot so fast, the hydrangeas actually weren't holding up well in my flower wagon, in the heat of the flower wagon. So I was only able to use the hydrangea blossoms in bouquets for just a few days. So I have a lot left on my plants. And this, again, is what the blue mop head one looks like. If you look at this picture of my firelight hydrangeas, this is what it looked last year at the beginning of August. But if you look at it, where's my branch of firelight? Hang on. I've got a branch. Oh, there it is. Out of sight. This is what it looks like now at the beginning of September. So you can see that the firelight hydrangeas start off, well, they start off all white, and then they start to get a little bit of pink in them. And then as the season progresses, they get pinker, then redder. So this is what they're looking like right now. And again, I don't need to use these right now. If I need them later on, late September or in October, I will use them at that time. I also have one oak leaf hydrangea. I don't have a picture of it in a bouquet because I only got one bloom off of it this year because I had positioned the pot in far too shady of an area last year, so I moved it. And this year it bloomed with just one bloom. All white when it comes up and blooms, but this is what it looks like now. And I think that's a really beautiful look with all that sort of green center and then the little pink blossoms falling around the green center. I think that's really quite beautiful. I actually like that better than the way these two look. I think this is stunning. That said, this is the least interesting one in the summer when it blooms. So this would be one when it's full of blooms I might purposefully leave till the fall, because that is beautiful. Well, the other hydrangeas are beautiful too, but that's the one I like the best. So you can see this bouquet, this was back on July 8th. You can see the blue mop head in the center of this bouquet. Really strong, beautiful, potent blue that just pairs so well with all the other strong colors that I have in the bouquet, which is mostly snapdragons, the snowdrift shasta daisy, sunflowers, poppy pods, and laurel leaves. This is another mop head bouquet with a mop head hydrangea in it, but this one, for whatever reason, doesn't bloom as blue. It tends to bloom like, look on this one. It's like half purple and half rose. It's also a different looking flower head, so it's not the same variety. I don't know what variety it is. I don't know what the blue one is either, because those were just bought as anonymous Mother's Day hydrangea pots that I bought because they were cheap and I wanted to have some hydrangeas in pots. And whether I know what they're called or not doesn't really matter. Nobody asked me what the actual scientific name of the hydrangea is that's in the bouquet that I'm selling. But it's unusual that it's not blooming blue, which is what I like about it. Now here I've got it paired with an allium, which is a drumstick allium that is a little bit later, just past its prime. So again, it's opened up more, and that's just off to the side of the hydrangea. It's got the purple marjoram coming up the top. It's got some red yarrow coming up the top. All of that is perennial. Then it's got the sunflowers and some poppy pods. And that's it. So we're now going to talk about, oh, hang on. Gladiolas. Now, I'm putting glads in here because most people plant them as perennials. I do not, but because most people do, I will talk about the gladiolas. I dig my corms up every year. Last year was the first year I grew them. I dug up all the corms, and I succession planted them this year. I grew two varieties, evergreen and espresso, and I succession planted them where I planted 7 of each week. And that worked out really, really well. The successions, they started a little later, and they came on. Well, I only had the glad the espresso to begin with. I bought the evergreen corms later because I went to my garden center to buy them specifically because they buy from, say, a wholesaler that I do, and I hadn't ordered any glads from them because I would need to order 80. I had 80 of the espresso, although I actually only had 70 come this year because some of them didn't make it. And there was that one package that was empty that came from the wholesaler last year. But anyway, I had about 70, and I didn't want another 70 evergreen because I wasn't 100% sure I was going to like it. I knew I was going to like the espresso because it's in a color field that I love. The evergreen one, only ever seen a picture of it. Wasn't sure if I would like it, so I didn't want to have 80. So I waited till the spring or late winter to buy the corms from my Campbell River Garden Center, but they never brought them in. But they said they would bring them in for me in another order, which they did, but that meant I got them later. So they didn't get started their succession planting until 3 weeks after the espresso ones. I love the evergreen. I'm definitely getting more of those. They are really, really beautiful. But anyway, so I planted them 7 of each color a week when I had both of them. In the beginning, just 7 of the espresso a week. And that really worked out well. I had them for pretty well the whole month of August. Maybe I had them starting in July at some point, but they're all finished now. I would like to get more of the evergreen, and Because I'll have more of the evergreen for the beginning and the end of the session as well, maybe instead of doing 7 and I want to try out, test out maybe a couple more colors, instead of doing 7 of each color, pull it back a bit so that there's maybe like 4 of each color, and then extend the season to hopefully get them into September as well, because last year I did get them into September. But anyway, so here's a picture of the evergreen gladiola in a bouquet. Just love it. And it's paired with a Thomas Edison dahlia, which is interesting because I have grown Thomas Edison dinner plate dahlias for quite a few years. And it's almost going on my chopping block for this year, because as much as I love it that it's a different color than my other dahlias, I never really felt it worked with any of my other flowers until I got the evergreen glad. I love it with the evergreen glad. So now, instead of being on the chopping block, it's one that I want to increase the number of plants that I have. But that's a digression. You can see I also have it with the purple marjoram that are sort of poking out on either side of the evergreen glad. I've got the laurel leaves, and you can see some sunflowers. Then there will be another dinner plate dahlia somewhere in there. So this bouquet would have like the 1 gladiola, 2 dinner plate dahlias, 3 sunflowers, 3 purple marjorams, and 2 branches of laurel leaves, which was my standard recipe that I used for pretty much all of the month of August. Now, I talked about snowberries before, but after the gladiolas, really the next only new perennial to come online, which isn't a new perennial because I've already talked about it, is the snowberries, which I use for the month of October. Pardon me. Yeah, well, no, September. They're pretty much done for October. And here's just another bouquet where you can see them in that I think they look absolutely beautiful paired in a bouquet. But there are a few honorable mentions that I want to talk about that are not on this list, because there are things that might be coming up for me. And one of them is rosemary. I love rosemary. So rosemary's got a beautiful texture, very much like the long-needled pine, except not quite so long-needled. It's a smell that I can smell, because there's very few things that I can smell, and I love the smell of it. And I haven't been pruning on my rosemary plant at all. I've been waiting for the stems to get long enough to use in a bouquet. And when a stem can go from my fingers up to my elbow or past, like this one, it's long enough now to use in bouquets. So next year, I might be able to trial using rosemary in my bouquets, and I'm really looking forward to that. Have any of you used rosemaries in your bouquets? I'd like to know, and I'd like to know what you think of it. Is the strong scent too strong to use in a bouquet? The texture's fantastic. The other thing that I might be able to finally, well, I'll be able to trial it next year, just barely, but 2 years ago I trialed 1, and this year I trialed a whole bunch more. So this year I have 23 of these, and this is a cutting of yellow twigged willow. I believe we all decided is what it was, and the cutting was this long, and this side shoot is all new growth from this year. So that's, you know, long enough cutting to use, almost to use in a bouquet, from 1 year's worth of growth from a little tiny cutting that didn't even have roots on it when I cut it in the spring and potted it up. This is what it looks like, because I tried 1 the previous year. So this is what a 2-year-old, whoops, I'm spilling little big rocks that are on. This is what a 2-year-old one looks like. So the initial cutting was this, just long here. And then I've got the side branch here, which is now side branching some more. I got this longer side branch as well. It's got beautiful yellow twigs, strong yellow in the spring. I think that would look stunning in a bouquet. I haven't trialed it out yet. So this one was the only one that I had this year that was more than 1 year old. So this is really the only one that I could definitely get, you know, 1 branch long enough off of at its second year. So that's something that's upcoming. If I can get, I've got 23 growing from this year. So if I can get 1 branch off of 23 plants, and probably this 2-year-old plant gets several more off of that, that would give me quite a few branches to play with for next year. So that's something that I'm trialing that one, the bigger one, has been on our deck. I'm looking for things that I can grow in pots on our deck that will do well, that I can use as well. So that one has been trialed on our deck since for all of this summer, and it did fine, but it did fine in the shadier side. I'm hoping that they will do well in the sunnier, in the hot sun all day long section of our deck, and then if I can use them as well, that would be fantastic. So that's a trial that I'm really looking forward to using as a perennial that I can use in my cut flowers. Now, I do walk the dogs on the beach once a week for a 1-hour hike, and I got the cuttings at the half-an-hour turnaround point. So realistically, I could just cut some branches every week to use in my bouquets, but then I have to carry them the other half-hour back. And sometimes in the well, definitely in the winter and in the beginning of the early spring, but the high tides are really high and there's some climbing involved, so that might not be a good idea. But so those are the favorite perennials that I use, and they take me from the beginning of the season with the camellia straight through to the end of the season with the dried, where'd it go? With the dried astilbe fronds, the potential for the drier hydrangeas, the potential for the what's this called again? I've already forgotten. Rosemary, began with an R. And of course the snowberries, which actually finish in, it's not that they finish in September, it's that in October we're usually definitely into rains and the berries don't hold up in rain. But I want to pot some of them up so that I can get them under cover, so that when the rains start, the pots that have snowberries growing in them that are under cover, I can still use those berry branches in October. Use the ones that are not covered up for September, but then use the ones that are covered up in the rainy weather. So it's interesting that, well, definitely some of these are focal flowers for me. Clearly the camellia is a focal flower. The hydrangea is a focal flower, although I don't really use it as a focal flower. The glads are a focal flower. The alliums can be a focal flower or can just be a filler. A number of them are focal flowers. Definitely the peonies. But if you want to know what annuals I also use as focal flowers, on top of the perennials that I use as focal flowers, you should check out this video up here, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.